criticizing my older sister because she didn't know how to do a trenza. She's like, and a lot of comparison. Right? She would always compare us to like other people, like, que no miras tus primas, ellas sí saben hacerlo, porque tú no sabes, right? So there was a lot of that, like, yeah, it was just like, you're just not getting it right.
Hola, you are listening to First Gen Healing, a podcast on Latinx healing and awakening journeys. My name is Priscila Luna. I am your host and intuitive prima.
Hi, everyone. My name is Juriana Hernandez. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I'm also an embodiment coach. And yeah, Priscila, I'm so happy to be here and share my story.
Yay! And you were, I read your story a little bit, and you were speaking my language. It's like awakening, mother wound, plant medicine,
Yes.
and just all of the juicy topics I think that we like to bring onto the podcast. So I felt like you were such an aligned guest. And before we get started into your story, one thing I like to ask is just like, what's something that's currently in your field?
Since starting my plant medicine journey, I really have been in my integration process, which is such an important part of this journey. Because in plant medicine, we get so many insights and wisdom, but to see the transformation is about creating like rituals and practices. And so that's where I've been right now.
Yeah. Ooh, okay. Integration. What does integration look like? I think we use that word a lot, and I imagine, or I remember when I was in the beginning of my journey, I was like, what does that even mean?
Yeah, no, and I'm so glad that you're asking that question. So integration can look like, it could look different for anyone that's on this path, right? But again, it's when we are with the medicine, when we are in ceremony and we are receiving, again, insight, wisdom, like getting the information that we went to seek, right, through our intention. It's okay, now I have all of these gifts that I was given, and it's the rituals. So integration is like the rituals, the practices, the habits, the mindset shifts that we put into place so that we could, from the insight, from the lessons, from everything that we gained in ceremony, so that then we could see the shift that we're seeking in our life, not just like what we experienced in ceremony, but in our day-to-day life. So for me, what has really helped in my integration has been my connection to nature, and just the presence of being in nature and to interact with nature and to talk to nature, to be present with the trees and the wind, and to really receive, right, the messages that nature has for us as well. And so that's been part of my process with my integration.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, it almost seems like it's different. There's different aspects to it, right? Like maybe like you mentioned, your mindset shifts, there's presence, being in your body, being in with nature. So that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Because yeah, I think integration and also like plant medicine, the realization that comes from that seems really cool, but it's not always talked about like what comes after. With great knowledge comes great responsibility, and I think that is what is integration, right? I do want to get into your story because I know like this is maybe more recent for you, but you mentioned the mother wound. And so I don't know where that starts for you, like, or if maybe you didn't call it that at first, right? We don't always know what we're navigating before we then find the language for it. So take us to wherever you feel you would like to start with your story.
Yeah, you're right. I did not call it a mother wound. In fact, I didn't even know I had a mother wound. I always knew that my relationship with my mom was a little bit different, but I didn't really know what made it different, right? Especially in the Latino culture, we see our moms kind of hold a very special place. And I remember just being around a lot of friends that had a very close connection with their mothers, and their moms were very nurturing and very kind, and like would use, like my mom is my best friend, and like
Yeah.
all of these things that I couldn't relate to.
Mm-hmm.
But I never thought, like, I just thought, okay, it's different. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember it was, I want to say I was in college. I was receiving my bachelor's, and I went to therapy for the first time. And I remember being in therapy, and of course, they ask us the question, like, tell me a little bit about your mom, tell me about your dad. And all I did was like cry as I was talking about my
Mm-hmm.
mom. And
Mm-hmm.
I cried but I was crying and also saying, my mom is the best mom in the world. She's
Mm,
done so much for us. So
yeah.
there was this like disconnect like between what I was feeling and what I was saying.
Yeah.
And I walked out of there feeling so confused and just being like trying to tell myself like, no, she's been a great mom, she's sacrificed so much, she's done so much for us, but then why do I feel this like sadness?
Mm-hmm.
And that is what started my discovery to really learn more about this my relationship with my mom.
Yeah. Ooh. Can I also maybe, I wonder if you've noticed this too, or if it came up for you, but I think that there are very nurturing, loving, giving moms in the Latino community, and I wonder if you had friendships where like you would go to their house or like hang out with them, and you would get these glimpses of like, this feels nice, like this feels warm, and seeing kind of the difference of going back home. And I guess, I feel like I can relate, so that's what I'm saying, like I think I would find little pieces of nurturing in others. Y como que me gustaba ir a sus casas because the way that they feed you, the way that they ask you or embrace you, it was so different than what I experience sometimes at home.
Yeah, oh my god, yeah, totally, right. I would see I want to call it like unconditional love,
Mm,
right? Of the moms wanting to nurture, right? Oh, le voy a hacer una sopita a mi hija porque me pidió que se le hiciera. Y lo
yeah.
hacían con gusto, right? They were doing it with like pleasure. Where like what I remember was a lot of like, I have to do this for you, right?
Mm,
Or like,
yeah.
I'm so tired, like a lot of complaining, a lot of like, so essentially at some point I learned to just not even ask for anything because I didn't want to hear the complaints or like how it was like a sacrifice for my mom, right?
Mhm,
And
mhm,
so yeah, it was when I would see that what my friends had with their moms, there was a lot of grief
mm,
because at that moment then I realized, oh wait a minute, like my relationship is different, right? What I
yeah.
have at home is not um, what I'm seeing that other people have. So it was like that was the first, it's like you don't really know because it's like if this is all you've had, then you just think this is normal, right?
Yeah.
And then it's when you
Yeah.
start to see what it can look like outside of what your experience has been, then you start to like get curious and wonder. And then, for me, it was just a lot of grief, a lot of sadness. And then on top of that was these messages that we get, right, as daughters of people would ask me like, oh, how come you don't like go shopping with your mom? Or like, oh, it's
Mm,
because
mhm,
you're so busy. It's because you don't want to go hang out with your mom.
mm,
And to me, all of that was so painful because I
okay.
couldn't say at that time, I couldn't say like, well, actually, like, I don't find pleasure in hanging out with my mom. Like
Yeah.
it's not joyful, right?
Right.
I don't want to be around like criticism or like having it be all about her. And
Mhm,
so there was a lot of these experiences where I was like in my 20s, like really, because that's really where it all came to light of
okay.
learning how my relationship with my mom was different than, just what I saw with my friends or even like coworkers and how they spoke about their kids. It was just,
Mhm,
it was just different.
yeah. Did your mom, was she like a working mom? Was she a stay-at-home mom? What was your experience?
Yeah, no, my mom has been a very hardworking woman. She's she's like I don't know, like a go-getter, right?
Mm,
Like she, and
okay.
this is why I said she had done so much for us, because I
Yeah.
still remember her, like when I was so little and she was like, I'm going to learn how to drive. And like we still talk about this to this day. She just took it upon herself. And I remember she wrote a letter to my dad and she said, if anything happens to me, just like give my daughters to my mom, to my abuelita. She's like, porque
Yeah.
voy, like I'm gonna learn how to drive.
Oh.
And she just like took the car out
Wow.
and she like came back, you know. I we were worried for her, but it was like
Yeah.
that just speaks to like her drive, right? Her drive
Mhm.
to want to succeed and just like she just has that in her. So yeah, she worked a lot. And so I didn't, you know, my sisters and I, we spent a lot of time with like babysitters.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I don't remember her being home. And when she was home, it was like just running errands and like, you know, she was already getting ready for like the next work week.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what life looked like for us.
Okay. You mentioned like also como hanging out with her meant maybe like criticism, like feeling judged is I think how you said it. I want to touch on that a little bit because every time I speak with a first gen Latina, unfortunately, that's something that we carry through into adulthood. So, like, maybe our moms were our first criticonas, like they nos criticaban, and then we carry that voice in our mind, and now we judge ourselves constantly. So, what were examples of what it felt like to be judged when you were growing up?
Yeah, it was like this sense of like never getting it right, you
Mm,
know, like no
yeah,
matter how much I tried. And it's like when you're a kid, a lot of it is you're learning and you're not going to get it right. And it's your
mm,
parents like having that compassion and that gentleness and like showing you how to do things.
yeah,
And I also think because she worked so much, right? And she was like maybe so much in her head that she couldn't really be present,
mm,
that it was a lot of these like expectations of to just do more, right? So it was like it could have been the simplest thing. Like I remember her criticizing my older sister because she didn't know how to do a trenza. She's
mm,
like, and a lot of comparison. Right? She would always compare us to like other people, like, que no miras tus primas, ellas sí saben hacerlo, porque tú no sabes, right?
mm,
So there was a lot of that, like, yeah, it was just like you're just not getting it right.
yeah,
And then, of course, you know, all of the traditional things like, y así quieren tener novio, you know, like those kind of things.
yeah.
So, yeah, I just remember like, yeah, that's what it would look like, you know, that even if I tried, it still wasn't like good enough.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Did you at any point try like name it for her? I'm thinking of a moment where según yo, I don't know, maybe I made this memory a little bit up, but I do remember that I sat her down and I was like, "Mom, like quiero que me conozcas. Like this is my favorite color,
Mm.
and I like this." And like I don't know, I just felt like you don't even know me, you know, like you're constantly because I also felt that judgment growing up, and I was like you keep judging me and you keep saying I'm not doing the right stuff, but like you don't actually know what I like, my day to days, you know, like I want you to know me, you know. I think she still says that that never happened. So obviously like there's
Mm.
a como que se niegan a ciertas cosas, but I remember it. I wonder like I guess if you ever felt like you could say something, you know, and you could express like, hey, I want to be closer to you, or I want this something that I see that other people have.
Yeah, you know, as you bring up this question, it makes me think about how, as hijas, we all go through like that awakening of our relationship with our moms at different stages of our life. And
Mm-hmm.
for me, that questioning and just like, hey, I want you to get to know me didn't come until I was like in my 30s.
Oh, okay.
So when I was young, I was like the biggest people pleaser. It
Mm-hmm.
was like, oh, you don't like how I did that? I'm going to show you, right? I'm going to show you how good it could be.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like years. And I do think that part of like me having a degree and having these businesses has been a little bit of that trauma response of like pleasing, right? And I still remember for so many years saying like, I'm not doing this for my mom, I'm doing this for me. But now that I look back, I really do think it was like that, looking for that validation, right? Looking for
Yeah.
that love, looking for that, like, I'm proud of you, Mija, like you've done so much,
Mm.
right? But it took me like years to get to that place where I
Mm-hmm.
could have that conversation and say, "Hey, mom," like, and start to name things and really kind of like, I mean, I don't think I did it so gracefully, right? But like calling her out,
Mm.
that didn't happen until I was like in my 30s. Because I
Okay.
remember in my 20s, a lot of it was I was just so angry at her. And
Mm.
like I was just, and I lived with that anger for like many years until finally, right, I was able to like work through that anger.
Yeah.
But I feel like my relationship or my healing process with my mother wound has been like a slow process. Not
Okay.
that that's good or bad. It's just been my process.
One of the things that I see is that our bodies speak, right? Our bodies tell us when something is off or wrong. I wonder, like, did you ever have physical reactions to interacting with your mom or going to her house or visiting? How did your body kind of start to indicate that for you?
Yeah, I mean, in all transparency, I was a very sick child, not
Mm.
in the sense of like having any sort of like huge illnesses, but like I would get a cold often. Like if I got a cold, I would be sick for like days. I
Okay.
remember having like, I went through a summer that I had these really bad rashes and like nobody knew why I had these rashes. And I was like constantly being taken to the doctors. Then I had this like constant nosebleeds that just like wouldn't go away,
Mhm,
right?
mhm,
So I had these little like ailments all
mhm,
throughout pretty much my childhood that now in retrospect, I think it was like all of the stress and all of the grief and all of the stuff that I was going through in
mhm.
childhood. And now, yes, now when I visit my mom, right, I have so many boundaries
Okay.
around how long I can stay there. Also, like checking in with myself and like seeing what my capacity is. So, if I've had a long week or if I've had a long day, then I choose not to go,
Mhm,
right? And
mhm,
also because I know that I'm not going to show up as my best self, and
mhm.
I'm going to feel more like triggered. And
Yeah.
so I now, right, it's like because I know that there's a lot to hold when I visit my mom, I have to make sure that I'm in a good place. And then also like while I'm there, checking in with myself to see, well, how long am I going to stay here,
Okay.
right? Because
Yeah.
there's only so much that I can really take in,
Right.
and being okay with that, like not feeling guilty about it or wanting it to be something else.
Mm.
um like when I leave, I still leave with love and like a hug and appreciation and all of that. But this is what I'm telling you, this has taken me years to get to this place.
Yeah. Ooh. Okay. What did it look like prior to knowing what your capacity was? And, like, because you name things that I think ultimately are tools, to be able to handle these interactions and these conversations. So, let's say you mentioned like your 20s, 30s, let's say. What did it look like prior to knowing that? Were there moments where you left your house feeling like confused or, like you said, angry was the word? Maybe walk us through, one or two examples of what did that actually look like before you could hold interactions with her in a more healthy way for yourself.
Yeah, I didn't. And I when it comes to like the mother wound, is knowing that we are separate from our moms, right?
Mhm,
And that is a process in itself. And so for a really long time, I didn't embody that, right? I
okay.
didn't
Mhm,
know that I was like consciously and energetically, like to know that there was a separation between the two of us. So if she said something, right, and I would get triggered, I would just engage,
Mm-hmm.
and we would have these huge fights, right? Or the other thing that I remember doing was I wanted to change her. I wanted to change her mind. I wanted her to see things from my point of view. And so
Mm-hmm.
we would get into these really like hard conversations because I couldn't reason with her, right?
Okay.
And so it
Yeah.
would just be like we're fighting, but like no one is feeling heard, no one is feeling like there's no we're not getting to a common ground. If anything, like I'm getting agitated, she's getting agitated. And then my dad would come in and he would say, like, no, no, ya dejen de pelear, right?
Mm,
Like we
interesting.
would
Yeah.
have to have like a third person. Or my siblings would say, okay, Judy, ya deja, like enough, right? Enough
Mm-hmm.
is enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that happened for many years, where it was just like, it was like that dance, but not a healthy dance, right? It was
Yeah.
just like, yeah, it wasn't helpful for either one of us.
Okay. Um, yeah, I like sometimes I see the imagery of kind of like a tornado. They're a tornado of their own. And if you're not grounded and have those tools, you get swept up every single time, into their tornado. And before you know it, you get spit back out and you're like what just happened? Why am I feeling so like anxious again? Or, triggered with, and when you don't have the words for it, it could be like well, for me, I'd leave crying, or I'd leave upset, or I'd leave like, and it was me not recognizing like, oh, I kind of don't have a footing of my own where I can reason, is this a reasonable assessment that she made or comment? Instead, like you said, it was just kind of like getting como que todo dolía, todo, it was all part of a long, long,
Mhm.
long, long story that I carried instead of being able to compartmentalize and be like, wait, do I want to react to this? Do I want this to allow this to change my mood, So I totally get you. Like when we're not there yet, we don't know that we can, right? Do you use the word enmeshment for that, or
Yeah.
do you see it as something different?
I mean, yeah, you're right. That would be a good word, enmeshment. And, as you were talking about this, I remember when I started to have that awareness of like, you know, my mom and like her behaviors and some of her own trauma, and to not do that dance anymore. And I remember like saying to her, okay, mom, like I'm going to leave, right? Like I'm going to leave because we were in that tornado, and her following me all the way out to the door,
Mm,
because it was like I was breaking that cycle, but it was like she still couldn't break it, right?
yeah.
And so following me all the way out to the door until I'm literally like in the car. Like
Mm,
that's how like dramatic, I guess maybe it had to, or drastic it had to be for us to end the cycle.
wow.
It wasn't like an easy one, but it was like once I realized I cannot reason with my mom, a lot of this stuff is her stuff, and like this has nothing to do with me, and like, but that is not an easy process, right? Because like I said, even when I was already having those tools and putting them into place, like she was like, she still wanted to fight, and I don't mean
Mhm.
like physically fight. We never got
Right.
into that, like
Yeah,
not like that, but it was like she still wanted to be in that chaos.
yeah.
And so, yeah, it took time.
This is coming from not a therapist because I'm not a therapist, but I'm wondering, do you think in some twisted way it's a form of love from them or connection or no?
Oh, yes, I see what you're saying. This thing that I'm talking about, this is what her and my grandma, this is what my mom and my grandma do. This is their dance,
Okay,
right?
okay.
So perhaps, right, it's my mother's modeling of unhealthy love,
Mm,
right?
mhm.
And I see my mom still to this day, like she's in her 60s, my grandma's in her 80s, and they still get into
Oh,
that kind of like tornado.
yeah.
And so this is why I do have a lot of compassion for my mom, and I have more of an understanding, because it's like now I see it. Now I
Mhm.
see that this is what she's been in pretty much her entire life. And so and again, not to say that this is right or wrong, but this is all she knows.
Mhm. Okay.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, she's still working through her stuff with my grandma.
Okay. From your therapist point of view, why do you think we get to see it? Like, and how come they never do? Because I can't imagine how exhausting it must be to live your whole life like that. And it might never end for her, right? Like, this might be like how she engages with her mom for the rest of her mom's life and then potentially with her daughters.
Yeah, and I think this is where I would like to bring in like spirituality, right?
Okay.
Because from a
Mhm.
therapist lens, yes, I was in therapy for many years and like in and out of therapy, right? And what I have realized and what the, sacred plant medicine has helped me understand is that, our soul has a mission here on earth, right?
Mm.
And that there's no mistake why we experience certain experiences, right? Even like our parents, why that there's no mistake why I have this mom. And when I
Mm.
look at my lineage, there's been a lot of mother wounding. And so why do some, break the cycles and why some don't? I really think it's our soul's mission, right?
Oh,
And so for
okay.
me, what I've learned is like this has been my soul's mission. So this experience that I've had with my mom, it was to clean up a lot of the trauma, the chaos, right, in my lineage when it comes to mother wounding.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, and that this work isn't just like here in the material world, right? Like when we're doing this work, this transcends like lineages, like even to those that aren't even here. And so yeah, that's kind of been my understanding as to why some do that and some
Yeah.
don't.
Okay.
And again, that it's not like good or bad, it's just this is not easy work,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
so um, some will choose to do it and some won't, and that's okay too. It doesn't mean that you're doing life wrong, you
Mhm.
know.
Yeah. So you see it from a spiritual aspect, and I wonder, when did this lens come into play for you? When did you start seeing things this way? Was it before plant medicine, leading up to it? Was it strictly after plant medicine? Yeah, when did you start to put on these glasses that not everyone, feel resonates with maybe, or they fit well? So yeah, because obviously for me, I feel right there with you. I love this lens, but I'm wondering, how did you even start to open your mind up to that?
Yeah, it came from even prior to sacred plant medicine, because I started to wonder why in my romantic relationships, like I was having so many challenges, and like why there's so many things, like so many dreams that have come true, but there's like certain ones that haven't, right?
Okay.
And so then I started to like look beyond just like, okay, like the trauma and like all the like relationship stuff. I started to like it's almost like these sometimes they, like the suffering, vamos a decirlo así, right? Or
Okay.
these experiences that we have in life. It's like, okay, what is the purpose here? Like why, it's like that. I guess a little bit of like, why is this happening?
Okay.
Right?
Mhm.
It's like that's probably the first question. Like, why is this happening?
Mhm.
What like what's the lesson here? Like and then this is the other, like, okay, how can this actually be for me and to support
Mm.
me? And like,
Mhm.
right. So it's like a process that we go through, that I went through essentially to then start to see it as like, okay, maybe this isn't just like, I'm not just a victim to this experience,
Okay.
right?
Mhm.
Maybe there's something more here for
Mhm.
me.
Mhm.
But again, that is coming from a place of like, when you start to wonder and from curiosity, when we start to like, ask ourselves those big existential questions. Because for me, it was like, okay, if this keeps happening over and over and over, then like I gotta look beyond that, right? Like, and so that's what started to make me wonder, like, okay, there might be something here that I need to see that maybe I
Mm.
don't fully understand yet, but like, let me go there and
Yeah.
and see, I don't know if that makes any sense, but it was like, because I know a lot of this that I'm talking about, it's like, yes, I started to just like get more into that existential place.
When you start to open up to like what's beyond this, you always hear the universe works in your favor, right? Or everything, I don't remember exactly how it's phrased, but like everything is for you, not against you. And I remember first hearing this and being like, that's BS. Like there's no way, like this suffering or these problems are like for me. But when you dare to go there, I think it's really cool because then you start to see like, whoa, yeah, like this made help me look in this direction or help me like grow this muscle, like or mindset. But as like from what you're saying, I'm curious, how does a mother wound show up in a relationship? Because it kind of sounds like something was happening in your relationships. um you mentioned like in different ones or in different ways that then made you question it.
Yeah, the mother wound shows up in like a lot of areas of our life, like not just in romantic relationships, but also
Mhm.
like in our relationship with money, our relationship with like women friendships,
Mhm.
our relationship with like our careers, like in so many different areas. I don't have any children, but but also with like your relationship with your children. And
Mhm.
so for me, I started to see that there was a pattern that with the men that I was, attracting, a lot of them had really good relationships with their moms. Like,
Oh.
and it was, I almost want to say that like most of them, if not all of them, had really good relationships with their moms.
Uh-huh.
Um, and so I thought, okay, this is what I mean about like getting curious. Like this is a pattern. Like how are these relationships also like teaching me about my relationship with my mom? Because here, I'm seeing it from like the male perspective, where like how they think about their moms, how they regard their moms, and I also think I mean, we know culturally, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Latina moms tend to like coddle and like have a specific relationship with their boys, right?
Yeah.
Men. And so I started to see that, and so that also made me wonder, like, why do I keep meeting guys that like basically like adore their moms? Where like I'm having such a different experience, and like I feel like I cannot relate,
Mhm.
right? Not that it's bad that they have a good relationship with their mom, but that also made me wonder, like, okay, how is this relationship that I have with my mom more than just like what I'm experiencing here on Earth, right? Like
Okay. Yeah.
again, going more into like there's a message here for me. There's something here for me that I still haven't really understood.
Okay.
Um, but let me explore this.
Mhm. Okay. Ooh. I'm feeling like this is where plant medicine maybe comes in. So
Yes.
it's a process, I think, to even open up to that. But I'm wondering, like, was it something that people around you were doing? Was it a solo mission that you were like, I'm ready for some answers and some depth? What led you there? And then what plant medicine called your name?
Yeah. So what led me there was a breakup. I went through a breakup, and at that moment there was a lot of changes that happened to me in like 2023. Like I left this job that I had been for a long time. I went fully private practice into my business.
Okay.
Um, I had a breakup, and so there was all these changes that came to be. I was going to turn 40, and
Mm,
so all of those things kind of initiated that spiritual awakening, because up until that point, I had always been very hopeful. And I had already experienced like depression, right? Like things had happened. I mean, obviously because of like my relationship with my mom and all of that. And I had already been in therapy, and I had done like all the therapies, right? Like the EMDR, not all the therapies, but like EMDR and somatic therapy. And I had tried like even other modalities like Reiki and EFT and like all these other things to help and support me in my healing journey. And they had been very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
But at this particular moment, what happened for me that was that I almost felt like I had been like walking on this plane and experiencing life, and that I had gotten to like the end of a cliff. And I was like,
Ooh.
and again, I wasn't like suicidal. This is like, I never ever in my life thought about like taking my life. It wasn't like that. It was like
Mm-hmm.
my soul was like, wake up.
Mm.
And I was like, I don't know where else to go. And that's when I started to seek the medicine. Like I started to
Okay.
have this big calling to go to Oaxaca, and I didn't know why. I was like, I need to go to Oaxaca. There's something there for me. Like I had this like almost like como una desesperación. And I
Mm.
remember asking I was asking my friends, like some that I had already like done plant medicine, like maybe not ayahuasca, but they had done like bufo and things like that. So I started to ask them,
Yeah.
and anytime I asked, like no, there wasn't any like clear avenue for me to like go somewhere and like sit with the medicine.
Okay.
And so I kind of just let it go for a year, and I just thought, well, you know what? Like when it happens, it'll happen. And that was it. Like I just like stopped my search for it. And I remember there was a woman on Instagram that used to do retreats in Guanajuato. And I had reached out to her through Instagram because she was going to have a retreat in Guanajuato for Los Niños Santos.
Mm.
And I never got a response from her. And it just was like, it was like, I got a response, I think, until after the retreat or something like that. So it was like,
Interesting.
for
Okay.
whatever reason, it wasn't happening for me. And so
Yeah.
I just kind of let it go for a year. I just said, okay, I didn't even think about it anymore.
Okay. Los Niños Santos are mushrooms, right?
Yeah, mushrooms, yes.
Okay. Did you also at that time hear like plant? Because it sounds like you were allowing for it to come and not fully like forcing yourself in, to experience it. Did you also hear like plant medicine calls you and like that it would lead you to it? Yeah. Okay. That's what I had heard too, and I feel like that's what it's been like.
I didn't know about that until after, right? I
Oh,
didn't
okay.
know until I actually like sat with the medicine. But during that time when I was like looking for it, yeah, like now in retrospect, yeah, it's like the medicine is also calling you. And I had heard of ayahuasca, like, and you know, I knew that it was like, all these people have different experiences with it. But I think because of how I felt and like how disconnected and how like numb, because for that whole year, it was like I was still functioning, I was still doing all the things, but I didn't feel connected. I felt lost. And
Mm,
so for me, it was like when it was when I was invited to go to a retreat, I I was ready because I had already been in like so much, I just felt like so out of like disconnected, right? That's all I could
yeah.
say. I just felt so disconnected that I was like, I'm ready. I'm ready for it.
Okay. Spiritually, that disconnection, did it feel like nothing makes sense anymore? It's hard to like, because I think sometimes first gens, como we're kind of sprinting through life, one achievement after the next. And when the spiritual awakening happens, I think it can be so hard for us porque the things that made sense, well, maybe for anyone, things that made sense before don't anymore. Maybe goals that you had don't seem like you want to even go for them anymore, relationships start like everything nothing feels the same anymore, I think, at that point. And it's almost like the legs, the roots that you had no longer stick, you know. And so I, at least for me, when I think of feeling disconnected, that's what I think of, you know. It's like nothing makes me feel like, okay, you know, I'm grounded, or like I'm taking a good step forward. It loses what its normal feeling was.
Yeah, no, that's a beautiful way to describe it, right? Because that's exactly what it was. It was like, again, I started to question, like, am I even helping people as a therapist? Like, am I even doing good work? What is the purpose of therapy? Like, if, there was a lot of those questions, and like, um, do I even want to keep doing this? And that for me was so out of character because, again, I always knew what the next step was. Like, I always had
Mm.
um, like a drive. That's something else that's like within me. It's like I'm a
Hmm.
very driven person. And so I didn't have that anymore. I really just felt like I was like in this void. And the reason why I know it was spiritual is because I started to have a lot of dreams. And a specific dream that I had was that it was my mom and my two sisters, right, in the dream. And like my mom is facing me, and she comes to me and she tells me, like, well, first of all, she's like looking at my sisters, and then she comes to me and she's like, ven, te voy a decir por qué nunca te he querido. So that was what she was saying in the dream, right? I'm going to tell you why I've never loved you.
Wow.
And then I remember telling her in my dream, like, no, mom, you don't have to tell me because God loves me. And
Mm.
then I wake up, and I was like, yeah, like I don't need her love, right?
Ooh,
Like I have
okay.
God.
Yeah.
Like I know, like I was no longer seeking that validation that I think for so many years I was looking for it, right?
Mm.
And I remember waking up, like I was awake and I got up and I just kept telling myself, like, yeah, like God loves me. Like I'm good. Like I'm good. But it wasn't like con un resentimiento. It was like I have it all because I have God, right?
Mm. Yeah.
And then
Wow.
right after that, my mom calls me, like I want to say like 2 days after. And she's like, Mija, ¿cómo estás? I've been so worried about you. And we stayed on the phone for like 5 hours. And
Okay.
it was the first time that I ever experienced my mom as a mom, like as that
Wow.
nurturing, like loving, like empathic, like no judgment. Like for 5 hours, we just went through like why I became a therapist,
Oh.
why, I had dated certain people, why, like all the stuff, right? Like we
Mhm.
were talking about my breakup, and she was just so empathic and so kind. And she was like, you're going to be able to get through this. Like
Mhm.
what I had wanted for so many years,
Yeah.
right? I got
Mm.
it there in that conversation. And this is how I knew, like, okay, what's happening for me is not like depression or anything like that. This is like spiritual,
Yeah.
because from having that dream to then like having her show up in that way, it was like, okay,
Ah.
there's there's something here, right?
Oh my gosh, Juriana, I'm on the edge of my seat. Like, I
Oh,
am sad. Wow. Oh my gosh. Okay. Yeah, I think it's so cool when things start to like, you know, it's almost like maybe the spiritual stuff feels separate from that life, you know, and it's like I think sometimes that disconnect is like the lack of knowing how to bring it down into the physical, or how to be
yes.
both and hold on to both, you know, and walk that way. So it gave me the chills just to hear, like, you know, your mom, like, first of all, that she's about to give you the answers that maybe you were seeking, and you're like, actually, I'm okay,
Yeah.
you know, like I don't need that. And that came, it sounds like before plant medicine, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, my whole body is lit up. Okay, so here's what I'm thinking. I think that maybe we'll leave the listeners on the edge of their seat
Okay.
and we'll do this. This will be our part one because I know we had part one and we have part two as well planned. But I'm wondering if you're okay with part two being your journey with plant medicine and kind of like taking it from there.
Sure.
Yeah? Okay. Ah,
Yeah. Yeah, let's
I
do
hope
it.
you guys listening are just as excited as I am because I feel like, this is the juicy part, the juicy parts that I think are why I started the podcast because we do go through these amazing things that are hard to explain, don't always have a platform or a space, like it's not easy to maybe go on social media and in 7 seconds or 60 seconds explain the amazingness and depthness and like everythingness, right, of these experiences. So thank you for bringing this story to the podcast, and I'll give you a moment to share your socials and then we'll invite them to listen to part two so they can get to hear your story, the rest of it.
Yes, so you can follow me on Instagram at Juriana_Hernandez. And then also my coaching page is Amor en mi _. Also on TikTok, I'm just at Juriana Hernandez. And I am a therapist. I work with the mother wound, the recovery of narcissistic abuse. I also do breath work and I help with the integration process of sacred plant medicine. So I do a little bit of a lot. I also do immigration evals. And so, yeah, reach out.
Ooh, okay, beautiful. All right, you guys. So I think this topic is so relatable. It shows up in our stories in different ways. There is a ton of conditioning, I do think, that prevents us from going there, right? Prevents us from sometimes having the realizations that maybe this is what's hurting us or something that we need to work through. So if you know of someone that maybe you guys vent to each other about these kinds of things and this would be helpful for them, please share this episode. And stay tuned for part two with Juriana, where she will tell us about her plant medicine experience. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Have a good rest of your day. Cuídense mucho, and I'll see you later. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.